morning and welcome to Dateline New Haven on WNHH-FM. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. April Capone has made our community tick for a long time, and now she's looking to make things tick in a new way as a state senator. April, the
Yeah.
former mayor of East Haven, has thrown her hat in the metaphorical ring to run for the state senate seat being vacated by Len Fasano, the 34th district, representing East Haven, Wallingford, parts of North Haven, and Durham. April Capone, it's so nice to reconnect with you. How you doing?
Hi, Paula. It's so great to see you too. Virtual hug. Uh,
Yeah. Now, I would offer you tea if you were there. I got my Connecticut News Junkie mug with my
oh,
tea.
love it.
What are you
Love
drinking
it.
in your kitchen?
I have seltzer in a Russo Plumbing and Heating Yeti tumbler. So just plain seltzer.
Okay. The
I
plumbing
could use a cup
and
of tea though. After the program, I'm going to get one.
a News Junkie, by the way, I suggest everyone go to Connecticut News Junkie to read a very good article about April in the
Thank you.
site this morning, because it's about this very kitchen you're sitting in now, April.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, you announced you're running for this office, not with a big rally, not with all your fans screaming, holding up banners, not making a tearful speech in a microphone. You were in your kitchen.
Yeah.
Why were you announcing that you're running for office from your kitchen?
Yeah. Well, because we can't go anywhere else, right? And that's so indicative of the time that we're in. Right. It's very different. 13 years ago when I launched my campaign for mayor, I was surrounded by friends and family and supporters and that was great. And now I'm surrounded by everyone still, but virtually. Um, you know, we're lucky that we have technology. Um, we can connect through technology. But yeah, I have to tell you, it felt a little odd, you know, being here alone. I feel very lucky that I have a safe place to be, and but yeah, it feels a little odd.
Some people talk about how the way the coronavirus pandemic is speeding up changes that might otherwise happen. So now Erin Stewart is another young woman with a promising career who'd been a mayor,
Mhm.
who, when she ran for governor last 2 years ago,
Mhm.
she announced from her home, from Facebook
Ah,
Live. She
mm,
preferred to do that to a rally. She's very good on social media,
ah,
and she had thousands of people weighing
mm,
in right then, and it immediately got delivered without the filter of a news report to many
yeah.
potential supporters. Some of us would say there's no way you can be a politician anymore without mastering social media, but that
Mm.
also there's a place still for that human touch in person and it can't replace. How do you feel about that change? Are you kind of eager once this pandemic ends to be out there pressing the flesh again?
Yeah, I love connecting with people, and that's part of the reason why I love being mayor. Excuse me. And part of the reason why I love public service, because I seem to have been able to build those connections, whether it was my time in mayor, whether it was at the State Office of Policy Management, and now with Yale New Haven Hospital and the Center for Living Organ Donors. When I launched my campaign 13 years ago, I actually made my campaign committee laugh when I said Facebook didn't exist. In my first campaign, it did, but it was still on college campuses. It wasn't until '09 that I remember someone saying to me, "You're a mayor and you're not on Facebook. You have to get on Facebook." So I did, but it was so different. And now that it's become such a necessity, so it is changing the way that we campaign. Not only did I do a live announcement from my kitchen yesterday on Facebook Live, but after that, I had a press event on Zoom. And
Okay.
it was yeah, it was very, I mean, it worked. It was very different. I think the technology, I'm glad that it's here because I don't know how we would be connecting right now without it. And I think the technology is helping us, especially for folks who live alone. One of my very best childhood friends is a single woman and lives alone, and I keep calling her to check in on her because it's got to be really tough for people who are alone. And at the same time, one of my other very best friends is working from home. She's three kids at home with her that she's trying to school age kids that she's trying to juggle school for, and a husband who's essential, so he's out of the house. So everyone is really struggling, and we're all seeing you know different different struggles. My
So you've been out of politics, April Capone, out of elected office, not out of being involved in other people's campaigns. You've been out of elected office now, what is it, 7 years? 8 years?
it was 2011, so this year will be
So
9
9 years.
years that I've been
What
out
makes you
of.
wanna jump back in to a not always friendly pool of politics? Why do you wanna run for office again?
It's not always friendly, but it is always gratifying, right? And I found it that way when you can make positive change for the community that you love. And I was born and raised in East Haven, and that's where I served as mayor, and that's where I lived most of my life. But now my husband and I live in North Haven, which is also a great community. The second I got here, the previous chair of the Democratic Town Committee said, "Good, you officially moved. We're putting you on the town committee." So, I barely unpacked, and and I was put on the town committee, and I just found that this Democratic town committee was so welcoming. Um, so I've always, I've stayed connected and worked on, as you said, worked on other campaigns. Um, why do I want to run? Well, I think we're having a moment, right? I know we're having a moment right now. It's a moment of crisis. We need leaders who understand crisis, who have led through crisis. And if now is ever the time, if there was ever a time to step up and be part of government, it's now. I was mayor during the economic crash of '08 and worked hard to bring resources to people, help keep people in their homes. I was mayor during 2011 and
Was that
in
Hurricane
Hurricane
Irene? I always
Irene.
got them.
Irene.
Yeah, okay.
We lost
And East Haven got
40.
hit hard by that because 'cause you're right there on the shore.
Oh, we got a direct hit that no one would have imagined. And fortunately, I called for the evacuation order, which was controversial. They always are, and that's understandable. But I'm glad that I called for it. And you talk about connecting with people. Not only did I call for the evacuation order, Paul, but it was the Irene hit sort of overnight on a Saturday and into the next Sunday. And that Saturday was just a gorgeous, beautiful, balmy August day. And I drove down to Cozy Beach and in the mayor's car, but I was in jeans and a t-shirt and sneakers, and I started walking around. And people were outside and they were working in their yards and windows were open. And I just started walking around, and it was my connections with people that allowed me to go up to them, existing connections that allowed me to go up to them and say, listen, I really, for your own safety, we need you to evacuate. People were saying, you're crazy. It's beautiful. We're not going anywhere. Right. And it was that connection that got me to, talk with people and really help them understand how serious this was. Preparation always looks like an overreaction. It's just the way it is. So got me to connect with them, and we had a great response to the evacuation order. No loss of life, really no injuries, no real injuries, no first responders who were hurt, because we were thoughtful about the evacuation order and personable about it. um, and so you ask, why run now, why run for office? Well, we're in a crisis now, and I understand how to lead through crisis and how to support a community through crisis. And that's what I want to do now.
We're talking to April Capone, former mayor of East Haven, who's now running for the Democratic nomination for the 34th state Senate seat. So, April, that's a really interesting story about what you learned being in leadership position during previous disaster. Lives were on the line. You had to take a step that people weren't going to like. Sounds like you're saying an important lesson was you do have to plan in advance, not worry about being told you're overreacting, but that you also have to be upfront and close to people and
Yeah.
talk to them about it. You have to show up. Are our leaders doing that? Like in New Haven, people don't feel like Ned Lamont is really understanding what their life is
Mm.
like. I hear in the Black community, none of the aid is getting there. People don't feel like they're hearing, I know what you're going through. This is why we got to do what we got to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think that different populations struggle differently. Like we all have different struggles, and if you were reasonably well off and you're lucky to keep your job and to still get paid throughout this crisis, then it's uncomfortable and it's scary, and you have real concerns, but you have different concerns than someone who is not getting a paycheck, someone whose unemployment hasn't come through, someone who I was reading Robin Porter is a friend, and I was reading her Facebook page, the article about how folks in the Black community are saying that the payroll protection plan is not reaching them.
That's a
For
fact. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I can see it, Paul. My husband is owns a business in North Haven.
What
He's
kind
had
of
it for
business
seven.
is it, April?
He owns a plumbing company. Yeah, he owns a
Hmm.
plumbing company, and then we own a drain cleaning company together. So it's a little offshoot company. But he had all of the resources and all of the help and a great relationship with his bank. He had everything that you could want for someone applying for the PPP, for the federal assistance. And still, he applied a month ago, a month and a half ago. He applied the day it came out, and he didn't hear anything for the first round. He just got told that we're going to try your application for the second round. So if you've got somebody who's been in business for 17 years, who understands, who has a great relationship with their bank, who had the resources, he's got great accountants and people working with him, he's every resource, and he couldn't get through. What happens with some of these smaller businesses who maybe don't have those resources if they don't have a chance? And that's the problem. That's the problem. The aid needs to reach the people who are really in need. And that's
How do
something.
we do
So
that?
yeah, how do we do that? And I think that that's about connection, and that's about leaders connecting with Hartford and saying, listen, we need programs that are more specific, right? Maybe more specific to what people need. This is why it was important not to let the Republicans raid the rainy day fund in Connecticut, um, which they wanted to do this year, before this happened, and last year. So that's really important, but it's also important, how can we get that aid to people, and what kind of things do people need? I was really happy to see Yale New Haven doing the walk-up testing site, right? It
Yeah.
just, addresses it. Listen, if you're like me and you have a car and you drive everywhere, right? You know, are you thinking about the people who don't drive everywhere, right? Who don't have cars, they live in a walkable area, and they take public transit? How are they going to get to a testing site? So Yale New Haven opening up these walk-up testing sites, I think, is really important. So it's about learning specifically what the community needs.
I've been following our state legislators trying to keep on top of it. And there's a frustration that goes through because I don't know how much sometimes a legislator can do. Can I give you two examples? So you identified something I hear a lot about, April. First of all, as you know, all these people were supposed to be getting an extra $600 a week for their unemployment. For more than a month, they couldn't get it because we were using a computer system in the labor department in the state that was from the last century. And they had to get retirees who knew how to use the system in to get it working.
Yeah,
Similarly, you talked about the small business aid. So the
yeah,
state's version of the program closed in 24 hours, and people who were not only like your husband, but basically owned the bank were the only ones who got in before it shut down.
yeah,
And the
hmm,
federal aid too, right? It wasn't anyone saying we don't want you other guys to get it. It's just that there was only a limited amount of money. It was a broken system, and a few people at the end who got it. Legislators, I don't know how much they feel they can sometimes do besides telling people how to apply. And I wonder about that. I'm listening to you, and all the time I've known you and watched you, you've been such a high contact, high touch politician. You're someone
yeah,
who seems to have been brought in, and tell me if I'm wrong, to politics, about the idea of public service. You're
yeah,
sometimes less interested in winning a political argument about 200-year running debates about political philosophy, and more like how you're going to not get killed or get your house,
yeah.
overflowed by a storm. How does a legislative role appeal to you for that as opposed to an executive role? As a mayor,
Mhm.
you were in charge. You issued the order. And
Yeah,
state government department heads and the governor issue the order.
yeah,
Why do you want to be a legislator as opposed to a department head?
yeah. That's a great question. It is a very, very different role. A state legislator has three jobs. First of all, to read and
Yeah.
understand the bills that come before you and vote in the best interest of your constituency. So you're right. It's not necessarily about executing, but about preparing. Right. If we are addressing issues of the people who are just getting by or not getting by at all, right? If we are raising that quality of life for everyone, making sure everyone has a fair shot with the laws that we pass, then that helps prepare us, right? So first job, read and understand the laws that are put in front of you, vote in the best interest of your constituency. The second job is to really be the chief advocate and if I may use this word, lobbyist, right? That word gets a bad rap, but in this case, a legislator is the lobbyist for the district. They're the people who are up there in Hartford championing for what their district needs and making sure that the tax dollars that are paid into the system, into Hartford, come back to benefit the district. And I know firsthand as mayor how important local property taxes are, or how important state funding is to local property taxes and local taxes that everyone pays. Even if you don't pay, even if you don't own property, you pay property taxes. Trust me, you pay it one way or another, right? So
I
that
hear you.
local, that state funding impacts the local budgets. So it's really the second thing a legislator does is really to be a champion and a lobbyist for their district. And the third thing, which is probably, so those two things are in preparation for a crisis that we're going through now. The third thing is to help individual residents cut through the red tape when it comes to dealing with the state, right? That's what it comes down to, right? To help, because the state is very complex. It's a big organization, and it's a legislator's job to help folks who are having individual problems get to the right place. You're a conduit, and sometimes that's the most important role. So I've done all three of those jobs. I've done all three of those jobs, whether it was as mayor, as the manager of intergovernmental policy with the Office of Policy Management, and even now in my role in healthcare, I think, and we announced yesterday that one of the important pieces of our campaign is that I really want to look at healthcare in a meaningful way. I think everyone wants to look in a meaningful way, right? But how do we make healthcare affordable and accessible for everyone? Because I work in healthcare and I see the effects of people not having reliable, affordable healthcare throughout their lives and how it's cost them their health.
Do you have thoughts, April, about how to do that? There's been the public option plan where the government would have a more robust private plan for
Yeah.
people who aren't on Medicaid or Medicare. I would argue it's almost like a Medicare for all plan, except you have a choice to stay with your private insurance. That has not gotten far in Hartford. Is that something you're pushing for?
Well, I think it did get out of committee this
Oh, it's
year. I was
advancing.
actually
Yeah. Yeah. Sean Scanlon's
yeah,
pushing that one. Yeah.
Sean Scanlon. Yep. I may actually I was just reading the bill. I don't know. I had the bill number in front of me. Um, but it made it out of committee, and then of course the session got canceled. I know it has a lot of opposition. I'm in favor of giving people choices, uh, but also making sure that everyone has affordable, meaningful coverage. Right? It's not okay to just pay your premium every month if you can't afford to go to a doctor or have coverage in name only. Um, so yeah, no, I
Well,
am
that
in
issue
favor. I
came
know.
up when that issue has come up statewide and nationally, excuse me, because that's sort of a Democratic Republican argument.
Mm,
Democrats say, let's have an plan that costs a lot because we feel you'll save more money with lower premiums. Republicans have often argued, get those less expensive plans so that everyday people can buy them. Republicans like Marty Looney have come back that those aren't really plans because once you're really seriously hurt, they don't cover you. And once they're high deductible so that if you want preventive care, like going to the dentist before something
yeah,
gets more serious, or going to the doctor, you really
yeah,
can't afford it from your paycheck. So I just skewed it with a bias there toward the Democratic side. But the
yeah.
argument has been that you use the word meaningful. And I think what you're
Mm.
saying is you're on the Democratic side of that argument about not the low cost plans if they don't have the benefits.
Yeah, but plans people can use. Plans people can use. I had a situation last fall, and I work at New Haven, and they're very generous, and we have great care. Right? We have great care. But I went to my doctor for a yearly, and she called me and she said, I think there's a little thing. You don't get too worried, but I want to check. It's a biopsy. These
I've been
things.
there.
Yeah,
Those little
could
things, like, of
little
course, yeah,
thing,
those little things.
little
Yeah.
thing could be cancer. Probably
Yep.
isn't.
Had
Just
that.
come and
Yeah.
get checked. Paul, I was really fortunate. It was not cancer. So I was
Yeah.
very, very fortunate. But I have the best plan that you can get through work. And I got a bill a few months later or a month later for $300. So I called up and I said, this can't be right. Like, I have great coverage. Can't be right. And the woman, who was wonderful, said to me, oh, it's not right. Your bill is actually going to be about twice that. It was $600 for what was, a simple biopsy. Simple, right? Simple to me, but simple biopsy, and it was $600, and it was fine. I paid it. It was fine. It didn't, there are other things I would have liked to have done with $600, but it didn't kill me. But my first thought, Paul, my first thought was the single parents that I work with who would have said to themselves, how much is this going to cost? And they would have called first to find out. And then they would have said, nah, I'm not paying for that. It's probably not cancer. And
I'm
that's what
glad, by
scared
the
me.
way, you didn't have the cancer.
Thank
Let
you.
me push back on you now from the other side, from the
Hmm.
left. So the argument going on in the Democratic Party nationally, it's not that relevant to Connecticut because we don't get that far on this, is whether people should have to worry about paying any money in that situation. So you have the Medicare for all people who say, as in other Western countries, you should just go to the doctor, not worry, and it's all
Yeah.
covered. And then you have the Joe Biden people and the other parts of this party who say you still have the choice to keep your private plan.
Hmm.
And the other people say it's never really going to be a choice until the government covers it because of you're never going to have a good enough plan in case they all do. I mean, how do you view that?
Yeah.
That $600 you paid,
Yeah.
is it possible to get rid of that without having Medicare for all? Or do you think we can't afford it and people just want that choice?
Well, I think, I was fortunate that I could pay, right? So I'm not making this as an argument that I shouldn't have had to pay $600.
No, I get
I
it. You're worried about the
Yeah,
single parent.
my
Yeah.
concern is other people who can't pay it and don't go. So I think people need to have, there may not be, we're not going to get to Medicare for all overnight.
Right.
That's just not going to happen. Whether it's good or bad, it's not going to happen overnight. So how can we start to get there and start to get more people covered? I think that Obamacare started getting more people covered, and it started getting children covered, and that's really important.
Tens of
So those,
millions of people. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's an important first step, and there are folks who want to say, well, it wasn't good enough. Well, at the time, it's where we do, government. And I teach at Gateway Community College. I've been teaching American government for on and off for 9 years. I'm an adjunct there. And so here's what I tell my students on the first day, and it's in the syllabus. Government is a vehicle to help us solve together the problems that are too big for any one of us to solve alone. That's it. That's all it is. So there are a million different ways that we could solve this problem. I think and all of them have their good points, and all of them have their, no, not one is perfect. But at the same time, it's about having the people at the table who really need the care the most and need the help the most. And I admire what Sean Scanlon's doing.
April Capone is trying to be at the table. She's running for the 34th district seat in the state Senate. She's here today at WNHH FM, Dateline, New Haven, 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenmen.org, direct from her kitchen, which is so brightly lit, which is definitely a leg up for anyone trying to be understood and seen in the Zoom age of the pandemic. Harry Joseph is our station manager. Harry, any word from any listeners?
Alicia Haney says, yay, April. Elio Cruz says, good memories with Mayor April Capone on the fight to end racial profiling in East Haven.
Oh, wow. Yeah, thank you.
Bob McCormick says, good luck, April. What made you want to run for Len Fasano's seat? And Tamara Collins says, need a local office to cut through the red tape.
Oh, Tamara, that's a really great point. More local offices. Yeah, she's right. Getting the
And Bob
services.
said that, in answer to Bob's question, I think he might not have heard the beginning of the show, April. It's fair to say, you said you're running because you think this is a moment. Someone who has experience with leadership in a crisis and helping an average person cut through the red tape to get help is what you're doing from your mayor, East Haven. I love the question that brought up racial profiling. When you were mayor, I think it was right after you left that the Justice Department came. And
No, they were there the whole, pretty much.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh my
And
gosh.
it was a pivot point. East Haven used to be a place, if you were black or brown, back in the day, you were worried you were gonna get beat up and then they were gonna lie about it and arrest you.
Hmm.
And the police, and they did, like in the Deep South, the Justice Department came and blew a department for being racist and convicted people of crimes who were in the police for making up fake stories about people they beat up and arrested on no
Yeah.
charges. What, from that experience, April, that you had seen change happen in East Haven that was so dramatic on
Yeah.
both race and on the relationship police and community, what will you bring to Hartford on those issues? You know, you talked about being friendly with Robin Porter, a state rep who champions
Mhm.
those issues. Criminal justice and race, what are you hoping to do at the state level for that?
I learned so much. That was that experience in East Haven, which really I don't think people know. That investigation encompassed all of my second term and part of my first term. Um, that experience and what I learned just affected me so deeply, fundamentally. Seeing what I saw and working with the Justice Department. Um, yeah, and I really do want to say that now, Chief Lennon is the chief of the East Haven Police Department. He did come up through the ranks, I think, and Deputy Chief Tracy, and I think that they're doing a great job. And I'm so glad to see them where they are. The department has really changed. I don't recognize many faces when I go in there, and it hasn't been that long. But there's really been a shift and a change. I think that these issues of racial profiling and policing, and also, keeping officers safe too, right? Everyone wants. I think. I think everyone wants to be safe in their person, in their home, in their community. Everyone wants that. And I think that generally police officers want that too. How are we um, how are we shaping the next generation of police officers? How are we doing that? And I think, Senator Gary Winfield is doing great work on the Judiciary Committee also in that respect also. And I think so. How are we shaping that? Um, just to journey back quickly, I can remember the FBI saying to me that when the East Haven police uh, arrested Father James Manship in the spring of '09, they said, they had been getting letters from the community and contact from the community. And they were thinking this might be something we may not want to investigate. And then Father Manship got arrested and they said, huh, well, this isn't good. And the agent looked at me and said, and then they arrested you. They arrested me as the mayor, and he said,
What did they arrest you for?
um, you don't remember that, Paul?
Something about your car, didn't they, like,
Yeah, no, they
make
were.
something up about your car?
Yeah, they were having cars towed from the beach parking lot, and really by chance happened to go down to the beach that day. I just wanted a hot dog at the Sandpiper, and and there were cars being towed from the lot needlessly, and I had the cars all brought back. So it was the charge which came up 6 weeks after the incident. 6 weeks later was interfering with police. Charges were dismissed eventually, but it was.
So the FBI agent said to you what? They arrested you.
Yeah, the FBI agent said when they arrested the mayor, we knew there was a real problem. We knew there was a
Mhm.
real problem. And that just goes to, when I was elected in '07, I was 32 years old. I was the first and only woman since the youngest person. So youngest person, only woman. And I think that there were people who did not, appreciate a young woman mayor who spoke truth to power and stood her ground. And I think that, that was problematic for some people, and there were some strong arm tactics, and
Mhm.
that's how that went. I mean, I'm not easily intimidated. So,
Well, actually, the way I remember that, and for people who don't remember, Father Manship was had a parish that had a lot of Latinos, immigrants from East Haven who were harassed by cops. The police arrested him, and he captured it on video. And on the
yeah,
video, the police officer said, "Why are you pointing that camera at me?" Then they made up a charge against him that said they thought he was pointing a gun, but they forgot to destroy the evidence where they're saying you're pointing a camera. That's what got them in trouble, then showed that a
Yeah.
group called Miller's Boys, and we don't want to broad brush paint the whole department. There was a group within the department
Hmm.
that was very racist and violent and crooked, and they're the ones who went to jail. They're called Miller Boys. And the way I remember the period, first of all, I wanted to ask you, given that change did happen in East Haven,
Yeah.
what does that tell you about the possibilities of change with this issue statewide? And what role would you play?
Yeah. I think change happens, change can happen, but it doesn't happen by itself. And it doesn't
Hmm.
happen unless we stand up for the people who are vulnerable, the people who are being taken advantage of. I think that I can bring those experiences to Hartford, and I have a story to tell for other suburban mayors as well, two other suburban mayors, two other suburban legislators, right? Because even in the legislature, you have to every legislator comes from a district, and those districts have mayors, and they have local governments and constituents. So I think I have a powerful story to share about my community and what went wrong, how it has now become right. Again, I just can't say enough about the good work Chief Lennon is doing. Um, but how it's that ship has been righted, but how painful it was, and if you can prevent that, painful for the whole community. Um,
Hmm.
if you
And
can
that was
prevent that.
intense. I would argue, tell me if you're right, that the intensity, the nastiness, and the pressures you faced as a mayor probably much more intense than you're going to face in Hartford, even the modern political things. I mean, they arrested you, and there was a male group of renegade cops who were pretty politically influential and had to have the Justice Department come in and bust them
Yeah,
that were arrayed against you.
yeah,
Were you
yeah,
scared for your life?
yeah. A lot of times I was. Yeah.
What did you do about that?
Paul, you darn you, Paul, you got me. Yeah.
You don't have
I
to answer
mean,
that if you don't want to. You don't have
no,
to
no,
answer
it's
that if you don't
okay.
want to.
No, no, it's okay. It's just funny. No one has ever asked me that. No one has ever asked me that. Yeah, I was afraid. A, a lot of the time while I was mayor. But I had a job to do, so I just pushed forward. I can
I mean, I remember
remember.
I covered the Malik Jones murder,
Yeah.
and you had a police force that was celebrating someone who improperly murdered an unarmed man, a police chief who became, I forget what they called him, the federal case subject number one or something, who threatened the lives of the Justice Department. They said, if you go with my cops on the beat, we cannot protect your safety. They
Yeah.
found out later they were willing to manufacture evidence. I forget it was 40 or 50 times they went back into a computer to change facts in a report and were too stupid to
Yeah.
cover their tracks. I
Mhm.
remember going to the rally the NAACP had at the police headquarters. I remember how we all did not feel safe for our life, knowing that law enforcement, with the power to arrest, the power to kill, and the power to lie, was threatening people and intimidating. I think it's pretty amazing to be the mayor in that position to come out okay.
Yeah. Well, it is, and I always knew that um, I was on the right side of history. I always knew I was on the right side of the issue, if that's what you want to call it. But I also knew that I was on the opposite side of the people the very people that you're describing.
Hmm.
And yeah, it was a scary time. I remember um, a security expert coming in and saying, to me, if you want to be secure, don't go anywhere alone. Don't let people know where you're going. Vary your routine. Don't make your schedule public. Don't all the things that I had to do for my job. I
Wow.
couldn't change what I was doing. So at that point, I really I started going places alone purposely if I had an event to go to or something, because I said to myself, what am I going to do? I'm going to take somebody from my office with me, and then risk that they get hurt too. I'd rather be alone. So yeah, it was a tough time, and
So you did not take that advice.
no, because
You're not
I
willing
didn't
to
want to.
change who you were or how you did the job.
No, it was too important. I was the mayor and people were depending on me, and I didn't have the luxury of being scared or you know, I didn't have the luxury of
Hiding, you
not
couldn't
doing my
hide.
job. It couldn't
If you're gonna
hide.
have the job,
No.
you can't hide.
And I wouldn't have. I wouldn't give anybody the satisfaction.
April
Uh,
Capone, former mayor, East Haven, running for state senate. I'm now going to stop visiting PTSD on you, and I'm sorry about that, April. I didn't mean to make that so emotional.
I do want to say one last thing about that, though. Can I say one last thing?
Sure, say all
Paul,
you want.
Paul, I just want to say, that the I'm certainly, if I could do it over again, I would wish that our community would not go through that. You never want the community to go through that. At the same time, for me personally, you know, the people who love you and who care about you and who nurture you, um, and who cheer you on throughout your life, they give you a certain set of skills, um, that are helpful and useful. But the people who do the opposite, the people who threaten you and try to intimidate you and bully you, um, they give you a whole different set of skills. And they taught me how to be tough and how to persevere, in the moment, no matter what happened. So I'm grateful to those people too. I'm not grateful that the town went through that, but for me personally, I'm grateful that I had that opportunity to build those calluses where I needed them most.
All right. Harry Drost, any other questions or comments for April Capone from our listeners?
Okay. Elio Cruz says, Paul, we're lucky that the store owner had video. And Ian Becker says, great to see you, April. Best of luck. And Alfredo Ortiz actually feels that April always took the side of power, and that when they try to do, protests denouncing immigrant abuse, that she would side with the police and say they were doing their jobs.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah,
Thanks for those questions, everyone.
I appreciate that feedback, and I think that at the time you have to realize that with what was going on with the FBI, there was very, very little that I could say. Now we can talk about it because it's public, but it was an ongoing investigation, and we couldn't talk about what was going on. So all I could really ever say was, is just that, police department is doing their job. We're even after my own arrest, there was very little that I could say about it. At one point, I said something in the paper. I was asked a question about something with the FBI investigation, and I didn't actually know what was happening in the investigation. But I made a guess based on what I did know, and it turned out I was right. I found out later that was what was happening in the investigation. But I got a call from the FBI that said, you can't talk about this. And I said, well, this wasn't knowledge that I had. This wasn't. They said you cannot say anything. So really, I couldn't show that, and I couldn't show what I knew, and I couldn't show what was going on. You know, I I I
We
certainly
know
do.
whose side you were on because we know who was against you and who was trying to stop you and who
Well,
was
there
trying to
is
push you
that.
out and who
Yeah.
was
I mean,
threatening you.
I feel, and I am sympathetic if there is a thought that I didn't do enough. I feel every day like I wish I did more, and I wish I could have done more.
Well, I
I
think no
really.
community in Connecticut has changed more than East Haven. Not there are no problems there, not that there aren't individuals who might do things wrong, but I've covered that stuff for decades, and I have not seen as dramatic a change in any one community as I've
Yeah.
seen there, and it's been a good change. And I
Yeah.
think that people like me sometimes broad brush communities, and I think there were always great people in East Haven.
Yeah.
And it wasn't
Yeah.
true that people who do wrong, they do that in every community. And they had a problem in East Haven. We got some help from the federal government when the federal government used to have a civil rights division that protected civil rights. And that's kind of how that changed. April, you were talking about being the only female mayor East Haven ever had.
Yeah.
I was just interviewing Themis Clarities, who's been 22 years up legislature.
Mhm.
She said in the over 2 decades she's been there, the male dominance in the chamber has not changed. She's the only woman in leadership. She goes to the meetings as the House Minority Leader. She's the only woman there. She
Mhm.
says only about 20% of the state legislators are female.
Mm.
And I said, how could that not have changed? That has changed. Not that it's equal anywhere in the country, but that's even started changing Congress. Why isn't that changing in Connecticut? And how do you see your campaign in that context?
Well, yeah, I think this this seat, to my knowledge, the 34th Senate district has never been held by a woman. That's to my knowledge. So I think it's important to elect women in leadership roles in government. Women typically have to be asked to run for office, and so I was part of. I'm still a member, but I was the chair of a group called Politica CT, and that was actually during 2018. So the last legislative election. So chair of Politica, and Politica's mission is to build a more progressive Connecticut through issues advocacy and the recruitment, mentoring, and support of women running for the legislature. Right. So that's what Politica does, right? And we elected. I think we won 6 races between the House and the Senate. We worked with 3 Senate candidates: Julie Kushner, who's out of the Danbury area, Mary Abrams, who was in Meriden area, and then Christine Cohen, who's in the Madison area. And we worked to get all 3 of those women to help them get elected. And I think so I am seeing a lot more of that spring up now. I'm seeing more women run. I'm seeing more women get involved. But yeah, the change is slow. And I think until our legislature at the state and federal level reflects the population, we're not going to see substantive change until we see that.
Right. How are you going to go about campaigning April Capone in this pandemic? You announced on Facebook Live how, for instance, you have to get donations to reach public financing. This is an election program. You've raised, I guess, according to Christine Stewart's article, 3,500. You need 16K in small donations, 270 or less, from 300 residents. Was that already being done more online and in phone calls anyway?
This is my first time participating in the Citizens Election Program, and I love it. I think it helps get the money out of politics. It helps more women run. It helps more minority candidates run. It's really, I think it's a great program, and I love it. We're actually up to about 6,500 now since Christine wrote that article. So yeah, we'd have to raise $16,000 in donations between $5 and $270, and 300 of those folks have to be from in district. So you have to get 300 donations from in district. And by the way, you can go to april4ct.com to donate if you'd like to help
April
us.
4, how do you spell number 4 or FOR?
FOR, april4ct.com. Yes.
And you can also watch April's video there from her announcement. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. So I think, phone calls, I always tell candidates when I'm working with candidates on their campaigns that the best fundraiser you can have is pick up the phone and call people and just ask them for a donation, because there's no overhead and it doesn't take a lot of time to coordinate an event. I think sometimes fundraising events take on a life of their own, and you threw a really great party, but did you raise any actual funds for your campaign? So that's something that I'm always coaching candidates on as well. So we are doing mostly phone calls, networking, and a lot of social media. We would, in this district, always the pasta dinner is a great fundraiser, and it's what we've always done. We're not going to be doing that this time.
Could you
We
do a
may do,
Zoom pasta dinner where you all
yeah.
share recipes?
Yes. Well, it's funny, Paul. We've talked about that. We've talked about Zoom cocktail parties. A very best friend of mine is a professional musician, and I've talked about having her do a live concert and selling tickets to that. So yeah, we're going to explore all of that. It's hard not to be with people. It's hard for all of us in every respect not to be with people, but the fundraising is going well, and we've done most of it online and through phone calls. It
I have to
really has
submit that one
changed.
thing is I enjoyed watching you in politics when you were in office because you're one of those politicians who really thrive on the in-person contact.
Yeah.
I mean, you really just seemed happy and charged when you were around people and you got to talk to them, got to listen to them, as well as the fun of politics. So I guess this is a new thing for you, this campaign. You're going to have to learn how to do that from a distance. Do you think
Yeah.
before the election comes that might change?
I don't know. I wonder if I will knock on one door in this campaign. I really wonder that. I just don't know. We're going to listen to the experts, and if it's safe to do that, we will. But I just don't know. I think as we
Do you have
sit
a
here right
sense of
now, we don't
how
know.
soon we should open or not? Any thoughts on the reopening?
I think we should listen to the experts. I mean, that's the only thing I'm interested in doing is listening to the scientists and the epidemiologists and the physicians, and going with what they say. And I think it changes regularly. So I'm on some of the conference calls for the hospital, and we just hear things change all the time. Yale New Haven just had their 1,500th discharge from COVID. I'm sure you covered that, and that's very exciting. It's exciting to see people get healthy. Not everybody is, and we've lost so many people. Um,
Yeah, the nursing home in East Haven that really got hit. Any thoughts? I mean, those are petri dishes. If you do a great job, you're still going to have people die in your nursing home. They obviously didn't do a great job.
yeah.
Anything we're learning from that for the future to keep the elderly safe?
So my aunt was actually a patient there, a
Oh
resident
no.
there. Yeah, and she was medically fragile, and she caught COVID, and she didn't make it.
Oh, I'm
Um,
so
yeah,
sorry, April.
thank you. Yeah, I think what I feel worst about is that she died alone, and I think um, that's happened to so many people with COVID, and um, that no one can see them, and that's the hardest part. I think that we do need to do a better job at making sure we can stop the spread in places like that. Yes, nursing homes are petri dishes. It's very hard. You have people in close proximity. You have clinicians and caregivers that are very close to their patients physically. It's necessary, but how can we keep the patients safe? How can we keep the healthcare workers safe too, in nursing homes, especially everywhere? But when we're talking about nursing homes specifically, how do you keep those folks safe? They have families to go home to also. How do we keep them safe? And I have to tell you another thing that I'm very concerned about, Paul, that I've been concerned about this for weeks, but I just started to see it in the news. I'm concerned about the mental health of our healthcare workers and first responders long term. This is going to be a long-term problem. And when we talk about having another wave of of coronavirus, how are we going to support those folks through another wave? Um, because we
Any
need
thoughts on
them.
how to do that?
Yeah, and I think Yale New Haven is providing some mental health support. They're doing things, they opened up the cafeteria. They opened up our cafeteria so that you can order meals to go if you're working there. So you can sort of take dinner home for your family, things like that. And I think anything that helps take the pressure off, but then of course, making sure that they have the PPE,
Yeah.
making sure the personal protective equipment so that they can be safe, making sure that that we are rotating healthcare workers through so that they're getting some time off to rest and to recover. Yes, and I learned when I first worked at the hospital, started working in the hospital, I learned that you can't, um, you know, you can be empathetic, but you can't. There's you have to be careful with how much you grieve when you lose patients. It hurts, but you have, and clinicians are very good at that, right? So they're very good at being warm and empathetic, but not internalizing too much.
If you feel too guilty or responsible, you're not going to help anybody else.
Yeah, and if you feel too sad, I think the clinicians that I know and that I've worked with have a very healthy understanding of human mortality and how to deal with it. Having said that, these are unprecedented times. So I think what clinicians, even clinicians who have built great coping skills at dealing with human mortality and the loss of life and the loss of patients and are caring and empathetic and compassionate about it, this is just a whole nother level. So I think they need the care and compassion and the support, also, to make sure that they're staying safe, to make sure that their families are staying safe, and to care for their physical and mental well-being.
And before we let you go, and thank you so much for sitting through. I actually hadn't been planning to hit you with those emotional questions. It wasn't even
That's
on my
okay.
list.
Nah,
But
that's all right. If
it
it's
was
anybody, I was
important.
glad it was you.
Harry Drost, can we squeeze in a few more questions or comments from our listeners?
Will Tower says, pretty inspired by what you had to say about gaining strength from those who threaten you. And he says, so sorry for the loss of your aunt.
Thank you.
Michelle Dupre says, unfortunately, it is a tough time for a woman to lead. I think she did a great job in East Haven. Thanks for the tough hurdles you crossed professionally and personally. And Christine Bartlett Josie says, remembering her time as mayor, these were really hard times. PTSD indeed.
All right.
Thank you.
April Capone, thank you for sweating it out through an episode of Dateline New Haven and ended with a smile. It is always such a treat to interview you. You're one of my favorite people to interact with in politics. And let people know one more time how they can learn more about your campaign for the 34th State Senate District.
It is April4FORCT.com, and we're also on Facebook as well at April4FORCT. So thank you so much, Paul. This was such a joy. So good to see you again. We've run into each other over the years, but it's nice to sit and chat.
Yeah, nice to see you, air quotes. Nice. All right. Well, thanks for joining us today, April Capone. Glad to see you're still in the mix. Harry Drost, thanks to the best station manager in the world who gets us on all the different platforms, all through cyberspace. And thanks for listening. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the Group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night on WNHH-FM, New Haven's home for community radio.